I would say welcome back to the channel. Day one of MoneroKon down was a good day, really good day. I met like so many great people. Y'all know who you are. I guess more people watch the channel than I thought. You know, it's kind of crazy when you get like a few hundred views here, a few hundred views there, and then you show up to one of these things and people like know who you are. And some people, they're like, "Oh, you're so courageous for showing your face when you talk about this stuff." And it's just like, no, I'm retard maxing, which is a new term that I came into contact with recently. And you know, it's really not courageous on my part to show my face and talk about Monero, and I think that's ridiculous to even say such a thing, just because the people who are truly courageous are people who go, legit fighting wars and are police officers and actually go fight crime and stuff like that. I just promote crypto online. And there was a question in the first talk today by Andres. The guy had said to him, like, "Hey, do you think there are ramifications to people who talk about private cryptos online, and are they risking some kind of consequence in the future for doing so?" And he responded and said something to the effect of just like, "Yeah, I think there is. So what?" So, which is a based answer. I kind of agree with it. It's like, to one degree, it's just like there is a side of this space that wants to be like renegades and like we are fighting the system, and then the other side, which, it's like you got to have some kind of just reckless energy out there that seeks to promote things that are dangerous. And somebody had asked me otherwise today. They said, "So why do you do what you do? Why do you make these videos? Is it because you genuinely care about privacy and you genuinely care about Monero, or is it for personal gain?" Now, I don't think he asked that in any kind of rude way. I mean, this is just a genuine question from a genuine person I had a pretty good conversation with, actually. And, I gave him kind of an idea as to where I was coming from, where at first I had kind of utilitarian and altruistic motives. And, I was like, well, we can fight the central banks and we can fight the market of the beast system. And, that's what Monero helps to do. Because it allows for people to opt out of this control grid that they're building. And this story is becoming ever more prevalent with Palantir seemingly taking over everything. And, everything's being tracked and AI is starting to play into the picture. And I have some black pills for you later in this video, because I've talked more about that OPSEC network anonymity and security matter we had discussed in the last video, and it's more scary than I even thought by talking to people pretty intelligent on the matter from various different organizations and groups that were at the conference. And that was one of the main journalistic efforts I tried to make, was figuring out more about this network anonymity and security issue, which actually is like actually a way bigger issue than I thought it was. So we're going to talk more about that. But it's Monero's a way for people to help themselves get out of the system. And it's also a way to help the people who are trying to construct this control grid to be humbled. And I think it's good all around. And I had an altruistic motive when I first started the channel. Now, is there opportunity for personal gain? Yeah, there is, because, if you happen to hold Monero, not saying that I do, although statistically likely it's probably the case. So let's say that I do, then it's good if the price goes up and, I'm able to buy more stuff and perhaps support a future family and kind of have, a good experience winning in crypto. That's kind of a good thing, right? So I guess I do have some personal gain involved in this. And I think anyone who's involved in Monero, who's actually honest with themselves, sees some level of personal gain by promoting it and getting involved in the ecosystem, because if you are one of these libertarian types, then you believe that everything that everybody does is for personal gain. Like even the altruism is done for personal gain. It's all about that Ayn Randian objectivist initiative for people to live and to survive and to maximize and optimize their well-being, like praxeologically and all that kind of other stuff, which I'm not. I'm not a Randian, but I am a human being that has self-interest. And, do I try to override that with, salvific efforts, yes, just like any decent person. But, of course, I have my greed and my desire to be right. I want to be right about Monero, right? But let's talk about some of the presentations, and I want to talk a little bit about the network security matter, because that is something that is definitely something we need to get on more people's radar. And that is something which is coming more on people's radar, and I appreciate Zeno in particular for his efforts. There are videos that I want to link to on my social media on Twitter, to videos that he has helped make, talking about things like Dandelion, talking about OPSEC issues in regards to security, anonymity, and how that is influenced by KYC and metadata and things like that. Because this needs to be like a way bigger topic of conversation. It's not okay that people like me have talked about Monero for so long, but we haven't talked about this particular issue, and I feel like that's a failure on my regard. But I don't know what I don't know, okay? You can only do your best with the information that you have. But the first presentation was by Andres, who's a pretty cool guy. Haven't talked to him yet. That'd be cool to talk to him, but he seems like a cool guy just by watching his presentation. But his point, one of the main points of his presentation, was that the window of opportunity is closing fast. And, we've got to try to get people onto Monero as quickly as possible. One thing that was interesting to note, because one thing that has kind of been in trouble, at least for me in my personal life and talking to people into Monero, is that, well, if you live in the United States, if you live in Europe, then the dollar or the local currency is pretty stable. Whereas if you're in Latin America, where he is from, then it's almost more or less like a remedy and a cure, as opposed to what he said was a vaccine or a preventative measure in Europe or the United States. And I thought that was an interesting perspective, because, in places where the currency is failing and in places where you can't really get readily access to cash, or maybe cash is expensive because there's a giant exchange rate. And I think that's actually a problem here in Europe. I have like 5 different currencies in my wallet just because I've been to a few different countries over the last month, and it's kind of ridiculous that I have to constantly exchange and get into different currencies and kind of pay a fee every time I do that and all that. So I think that there's a use case there, and especially if you're able to adopt local vendors on board and you can just pay them in Monero and have it be denominated in the local currency but not have it be paid in the local currency. I think that would be a use case there that people could take advantage of. But generally in the United States, where I'm from, where everyone uses the dollar and the dollar is relatively stable, it's kind of hard to convince people to use Monero unless you offer like some kind of significant discount, or you just already start working with people who care about their privacy to such a degree. So, he says the window of opportunity is closing fast, cash is going away, and there's going to be increasing crackdowns on privacy moving forward into the future. And the privacy problem is just naturally going to get worse because of network security problems that I'll talk about in a little bit. He says that price is a billboard, and I had mentioned before that there is kind of a self-interest on behalf of a lot of us. We do know that there is a kind of virtue signal out there that says that, we shouldn't concern ourselves with price. Now, we shouldn't concern ourselves with only price. I do agree with that. But it does have importance for it being an advertisement. If Monero was, let's say, not in the top 50 when I first got into crypto, then I probably wouldn't have taken note of it, and I probably wouldn't have known it existed. And that's a point that he was making when he was looking for crypto back in 2017. It was in the top 5. And so he just looked into it because it was in the top 5. He felt like he missed the Bitcoin boat, I think, and I don't want to mess up your story, dude, but I think that's what he said. And therefore, he was looking into it, and he was like, what's this other one that may be undervalued relative to Bitcoin? And he looked into it, and he saw that it was Monero and had privacy features that Bitcoin did not have. And therefore, it was something that he wanted to look further into. And, here he is like 8 years later, and he is a leader in the community in the space, So price can attract good people into the space who didn't know about something before. And it also pays for miners and, has some kind of technical effect in that regard. He says don't give it away. Don't just willy-nilly give your Monero away. And I guess people do that. I don't know. I don't know them. I mean, that'd be cool if people just, although I have received some donations, and I do appreciate that for those who have donated, but I wouldn't say that's giving it away. We're earning it here on the channel with videos and stuff like that, but I guess there are people out there just like, hey, go take your Monero. He's saying that devalues the Monero and makes it look like it's not something that is as valuable as it should be. So I do kind of agree with him on that. He talked about something called the IKEA effect, which was kind of interesting, right? Where it's worth more if there's more effort put into getting it. And this kind of goes back to the delisting conversation where it's like, okay, it's a little bit more difficult to get Monero because it's not something that you can just hook up a bank account to and then pay cash for. You know, it's not like you can go on Coinbase and get it. In most cases, you just can't get it with cash by doing a direct bank transfer. You have to, you know, go through a little bit of a process to get access to it in most cases, or you have to just earn it. And that's the most private way to earn it. If you really want to earn your Monero and have it be anonymously earned, probably the best way to do it is to earn it by selling goods and services, right? So that's something to note and would be ideal if, actually, I won't get into that, but he also said to look cool, right? Such good, like great advice. Look cool, be cool, use Monero, because people want to be and look cool, and therefore, if you're looking cool, being cool, and you use Monero, then people are like, hey, that guy's got something that I want, because I want to be cool too. And they think that maybe that's Monero that makes you cool. Kind of like the whole cigarette thing is what he compared it to. You know, cigarettes like kill you, and you know they're not great. And I smoked a few today. I have to be honest with you, but you know, one of the reasons people get into cigarettes is because it looks cool and people want to be cool. That sounds kind of like boomerish, Reaganish propaganda, but I think there's probably some truth to it. And he said that, you know, if you're somebody who people respect in your local community and people see you as an interesting person and you happen to use secret money, and that's one of the main phrases he said was secret money instead of private money, because private money sounds like a little bit too brainiac-y. It's just like, yeah, like privacy, right? Not making fun of y'all, but, you know, if you say secret, that's kind of sexy, right? So that's another good point that he made. I'm going to start saying I use secret money. I think that sounds a little bit cooler. So we're saying secret money moving forward. And then I missed presentations for the rest of the day. And the last presentation I saw was from Justin German guy, Aaron Hoffer, and he was talking about the latest updates with FCMP. They're still doing some audits on some things called divisors, and it makes verification faster for transactions or something. A lot of it went over my head. I'm not even going to get into it. If you want to find that presentation, you can understand that stuff, go ahead and have at it. Something I want to look into is called RPC fuzzing. Something about Monero's RPC endpoints. Maybe that has to do with network stuff, but whatever. I'll figure that stuff out. Good presentation. Okay, so let's talk about this network security thing. Also, Fyro is a cool project. I talked with Ruben today, and thank goodness he didn't know, you know, anything about the channel, so that you know, he didn't have to sit me down like a kindergartner and go through all this stuff. Although he was very nice to explain a lot of different things in detail to me, and you know, some of it went over my head, and I was like, yeah, okay, got it. You know, because when you're at MoneroKon, you just kind of assume that people know certain things, and you know, he's at a very high level, and he broke a lot of things down for me that were you know, things that I need to follow up on to better understand. But this is a great project. They have confidential assets that are coming. They have curve trees, which is a kind of FCMP. I mean, I had no idea that they even had FCMP as part of their thing. I mean, who does all the work on this? I mean, Monero has so many developers, but yet Fyro has been ahead of the game with things like, I think they do have some kind of version of Dandelion Plus on their blockchain, and Relentless Spark. It's like an in-house privacy protocol. Also hides assets. They've got thousands of master nodes. I mean, I don't know who's running those things. I mean, that's crazy. Thousands? That's wild. I mean, who are these people? Like, because I know of like a few people who are into Fyro, but like, I guess there's like a whole army of just secret people who are into this project. And you know, you wouldn't know too much about it because it doesn't really seem popular, and you know, the price is relatively not that high, but it's like seemingly like a very sophisticated project, and you know, Maybe I'll do another video on this. Maybe I'll interview Ruben for my channel. But yeah, so he was the first person that I talked to about this network security problem that I was, on yesterday. And, I won't go into detail about our conversation, but suffice to say that there are interesting ideas out there in regards to Dandelion and NYM having some kind of mitigating effect. And that was kind of the main point of the conversation was it'd be ideal if there was a mitigating factor in regards to cryptos that want to be private, um, because there are going to be people who are not educated even on VPNs who are going to be using private cryptos because they want to have fungible, easy money to use. And it would be ideal if there were, again, mitigating effects like Dandelion or Tor or the NYM Mixnet or something like that. This was something that this person had mentioned. And I kind of took that and thought it was an interesting thing. There are other people who, will say that, things like Dandelion offer a kind of false sense of security because it may not actually hide IP as well as some people may think, and therefore they will not take into account other OPSEC steps that maybe need to be done, and they'll put too much trust in the protocol, and it could be, according to Zeno, he had a presentation today on, I believe, the attacking of Dandelion through spy nodes, and there being I'm sorry, I missed a lot of that presentation. Even if I caught it, probably would have gone over my head. I think he's maybe working on another presentation about this. Maybe that wasn't the one today. But it was about how spy nodes on Monero could actually undermine Dandelion. So it's, again, it's not like a panacea, any of these things, running through Tor or doing Dandelion or using a VPN or really any of these things, but it's about mitigation. It's about not being the lowest hanging fruit, I guess, and covering yourself up a little bit. So I had talked to other people as well, from Cake Wallet and from Trocador. That was a very enlightening conversation when I talked to the Trocador people. We were talking about AML checkers, and I guess according to them, and I don't want to misstate them, but this is, I didn't write any of this stuff down, but based on what I remember from our conversation, they had to discontinue the AML check feature that they had as part of their service because the people who provided the AML service to them made a determination that only they could do the checks because they apparently track people who did AML checks. It's not just that the AML checkers are tracking things in regards to what it is they're AML checking. It's also there are people tracking the AML checkers and seeing what it is that they're checking. So you got this whole like loop-de-loop Russian doll type thing going on with all the surveillance. This is like some kind of KGB type stuff going on with the surveillance of people who are looking up activity on the blockchain. And we have done stories here on the channel about how people will go to a blockchain exploring website, of which apparently a lot of them are honeypots. They'll capture your IP address, and then they'll look at the transaction ID that you're pulling up, and they'll link your IP address to that transaction. They'll link it with the amounts if you're using something like Bitcoin or Ethereum, and they'll track your activity from there. And with all of the connectivity and the metadata that they could have from KYC exchanges or from whatever websites you're visiting or your general activity, maybe you're logging into personal accounts or something like that, and then that gives away some kind of metadata about who you are. They can link that to your crypto stuff. I mean, they were going into detail with me about how crazy the IP tracking and the information print that you have online is and how that can be connected to your crypto activity, even if the crypto activity is somewhat private, especially if you're doing things through KYC exchanges. You can really easily get into trouble. So I was kind of black-pilled when I was listening to all this because I then talked to another gentleman from Cake Wallet, and we were talking about the same matter. I was chatting up everybody today about this whole network vulnerability thing. I'd even talked to a fellow at Edge Wallet to kind of get his opinion. They were talking about implementing NYM Mixnet, which is a very popular thing that's coming at this point. And there's a presentation, I believe, tomorrow from Harry about the NYM Mixnet and the benefits of that. But um, this is a big thing. This is like a cutting edge problem. Like, how do we provide easy IP anonymity for our users who are using crypto on our platforms? That is like one of the big cutting edge problems that's in the space. And there are some people working on solutions. There are some people who disagree with the solutions being provided. There are some people who just want to leave it up to the users completely to figure it out for themselves. But you know, my opinion is that mitigating implementations are good. Okay, so if we could have cryptos that automatically link up with Tor, I think that's a good thing. I think Dandelion is a good thing. We don't want people to have a false sense of security, but look, I think people get a false sense of security when they use private cryptos and they think that they're just being private just because they're using private cryptos. I think that's a false sense of security. And when you don't have any kind of mitigating factors for this network anonymity problem, then I think that's problematic personally. And you know, it's okay to tell people to use a VPN. Ideally, they use a VPN like Mullvad or a VPN that they can pay for the service with cash, so that it doesn't connect with their personal identifiable information, and all that stuff is well and good. And I did get some opinions on VPNs from some pretty sophisticated people at the conference. Have heard good things about Proton VPN. Mullvad, another good one. Those were like two of the top ones that people had recommended. But dude, there are even problems with that, because if you're using a VPN, you're consistently using the same VPN, and you're like going to the same, you know, other port or what have you when you're using the VPN, and you're still doing similar activity, you know, that would be linked to activity that would be connected to you because you're visiting certain websites, and you're doing certain social media activities, and you're doing certain maybe even crypto activities, right? Then they could link that activity to you even if you're using a VPN, simply by just observing the activity that is going on. And then you know, they would know that you're using a VPN, but they would still be able to link that you're doing certain things. And you know, if you're using crypto with that activity, then that's a problem. So there was one solution that somebody had recommended, which is to just simply have a separate phone, a separate computer that you don't do anything else with, except for crypto activity. And that sounds like a pain in the butt, but that seems to be like the best solution if you're trying to really get network anonymity. Is you have a separate phone that you don't access the internet with except for using crypto. Because if you access the internet, then apparently these websites, they capture data about what kind of phone you have, how big your screen is, you know, what kind of operating system you have, you know, and then you get like fingerprints, and then like maybe you go to other websites, and then maybe you go to your social media account, and all these things kind of connect together to where if you're making you know, a fingerprint of yourself digitally, and all these things are connected to the same VPN, and you're not changing your VPN, you know, access point or whatever for every website you go to, for every activity that you do, or before you go to your crypto wallet, then they can just simply link all that activity together, put it to you, even if you're using a VPN. So, what was the best solution that I understood? And this is paranoid talk, okay? Like, unless like a three-letter agency is going after you, you probably don't really have to worry about all this. But still, it's just the fact that I didn't know about this is probably because I'm a little bit more. That's probably why I'm a little bit more paranoid at this point. But you know, it's best to just have a separate phone. That's the conclusion that I came to. You have a separate phone, which has a separate VPN, or you have a separate computer that has a separate VPN. And that's where you do your crypto stuff, dude. You don't have any other digital fingerprint with those devices at all. And, you know, you set up your freaking VPN location in China, or in like, you know, some foreign country. And that is maybe what you have to do in order to overcome this network anonymity problem. But I'm learning more every day. I think obviously there's a balance to all this stuff, but yeah, we've got to really get people aware of this network lack of anonymity problem because this is actually a serious thing. I don't think that this is FUD at all, and I think that there are mitigating factors that every project can implement in their cryptos in order to at least make this less of a problem. Now, some people had commented on Dandelion adding, uh, slower transactions to Monero because it has to do its Dandelion thing, to obfuscate your IP before it sends off the transaction. But the general consensus was, okay, if you're trying to use Monero because it's a private crypto, then you're willing to sacrifice a number of other things in order to get that privacy. And if you're a privacy coin, I think that you should be willing to sacrifice and make the trade-offs to optimize the privacy for the users. I think that is honestly my perspective on it. So those are just some comments from today. I had a great talk with Paul from Edge Wallet. I learned a lot about Edge Wallet, which is a super good product. It's great because they have like an invoicing feature in their wallet where if you want to have somebody, if you want to have somebody pay you a certain amount of money because they owe you for pizza or something like that, then you can send them a request and it goes over like a separate blockchain, but they can pay that request in like a number of different cryptos, which is really cool. You can also do the same thing with Cake Wallet, which is cool. It's an invoicing kind of program, which is something that I learned today. So those are two cool features that businesses can use that are Zelle-like, right? And you can request money, people can request money from you, makes that ordeal or exchange a little bit easier. And then Edge Wallet's also pretty cool because I did set up a wallet today and it was very easy. Didn't have to write down seed phrases or anything like that. They just have you set up a wallet. The seed phrase is with your wallet, but it doesn't make you like write it down like right when you set up the wallet. It's very user friendly in that regard. Like I set up an account and you can actually get like an alias, which is cool. That's tied to your other crypto wallet addresses, and so that makes the experience of accepting and sending money a little bit easier. It's a pretty polished user interface, and what's also cool is that you can export your transactions to QuickBooks. So if you're an accountant, and I talked about this a little bit with the full chain membership proofs video, if you're like an accountant and somebody gives you their view key after full chain membership proofs, and you can see everything that's going on their wallet. You can log stuff. You can also just have them export their activity in the Edge wallet. And what's cool about that is in Edge Wallet, you can actually make tags for your certain transactions so that you can identify what the purpose of the transaction was, which is one of the suggestions that I had for wallet providers in order to make the integration of Monero into accounting softwares easier. And I'm so glad that they're already on it. And apparently Paul has kind of like a background in all this, which is why he's been ahead of the curve on making these kinds of advancements in his wallet so that you can more seamlessly use your Edge wallet for business. You can categorize the transactions as they come in, and then you can export all that and set up your QuickBooks or your accounting software in such a way to where it seamlessly just kind of gets uploaded into the program and things are classified properly. Now, the vendor and payee situation is a little bit different. You have to like manually put in the vendors and payees as far as I understand, but at least the category and the accounts can automatically be input there according to certain rules that you maybe have set up in the accounting software to, tag in order to correlate with like the descriptions of the transactions that you have in the Edge wallet. So that's all super cool. I was very psyched to hear about all that. Also talked with Cake Wallet a little bit about some of the updates with background sync. Cake Wallet's always ahead of the curve. We love Cake Wallet. Talked to Trocador a little bit. I'm going to talk to the Trocador bros a little bit more tomorrow. I was more or less just spurging out today with them on the whole network security anonymity problem, which was like a very black pilling kind of experience. But I'm actually going to talk to them a little bit more about what their program and what their like software and product does, so that we can get a little bit more of an idea of that. And then I had some great like food today at the conference. Decent coffee. What else to say? I think it was just a good experience. was good talking to people there. Some people that I had known online for like, 3, 4 years, and was able to just kind of connect with those people, which was like a super good experience. So it's wonderful to make friends. I think that when you're just chronically online, and people have differences of opinion, and some people like certain other coins and they're not maximalists, like there's like a tribalism that can happen. But what's cool about coming to the meet space is, we can all just kind of like chit chat together and like become friends, and realize that we have differences of opinion, but like nobody's really a bad person at the end of the day, unless like we have like some Fed people who are trying to like sow division in the community or something like that, which who knows, that's probably maybe happening. But for the most part, like people are good and they have good intentions, and we're all just trying to make the best of a pretty crazy global situation with the mark of the beast system coming in and Palantir taking over the world and everything becoming a surveillance nightmare. And I think we're all just trying to find the best solutions to getting out of that. And we have to be very grateful that everybody's trying to do their best to promote Monero and to develop Monero and to push things to the next level so that we can retain our privacy and sovereignty. So that's all I got to say about day one for MoneroKon. And we got another day tomorrow, which I'm psyched about. And love you all. God bless you soon.